So I have the sofa then. Ooh.
You take the sofa. Sprawl out, lay out.
It's like
so tell me about your childhood.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
So look, I mean, it's interesting, right? This conversation is about prod ops. I think we talk a lot about DevOps. But before we start, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, and you have a weird title. So maybe we start there.
All right, so my name is Frederic Veron. I'm glad to be with you here this afternoon. I'm CIO and head of safety and soundness at Deutsche Bank. Is that what you're...
Yeah, that's the weird part. What is safety and soundness?
Safety and soundness. Safety and soundness. It's like thunder and lightning. You guys know New York Giants, right? Didn't work that well, though, then at the time. View it as the, I don't know, the Batman and Robin of IT. That sounds better?
Yeah, that's better.
Right?
I like
so something goes wrong, and we're there to really help the business to actually not have that impact, or even better, to avoid anything going wrong ahead of time. So that's that.
Well, and so I mean, at a kind of core responsibility level. So basically, you've got all the production operations, right?
Yes. So I'm responsible for all of the production of all the systems of the bank around the world.
That's a lot.
And I just got a text from my boss right now, so I'm not just going to look at it. We're going to continue to discuss now.
How many systems are we talking about?
So in terms of systems, I'm going to just give you a count in terms of application. It's about 6,000 applications around the world.
And how many people?
A large number of people, and too many people. And actually, that's one of the things. If I could take the people out of the equation, probably would be a bit safer, a bit more sound.
So I think that makes sense, right? If you could take the people out. No, but that's really a good point, right? Because I think a lot of what we're talking about here, if I think of DevOps, right, and I think about what really DevOps has created for organizations and what is at the core, it's really the automation that enables that DevOps mindset and culture. So what role is automation playing in kind of this prod ops conversation?
So absolutely critical. I mean, the idea is, as much as we can, we want to automate, because obviously errors comes from misintervention or mistyping something on the keyboard and so forth, right? So that's the idea. And we'll talk about prod ops, which is, well, if you cannot automate, then you have to deal with people. So now you'd better make sure that you position them in a setting that is going to make them the most successful, as possible as you can, as much as you can. So we'll talk about that.
The automation business case is about efficiency, but the real value is about the safety and soundness.
Yes, I mean, the efficiency is one part of the equation, but really we're talking about safety and soundness there. Because if you know the input, then you know the output, because you automate it in between. So that's really important for us. Yeah.
So at the scale we're talking about and the level of operations you have, and I think actually maybe just one kind of take a step back, maybe, can you give us a scope of Deutsche Bank as an organization? I think oftentimes people don't know really what Deutsche Bank does.
So Deutsche Bank is the kind of the non-US kind of global bank, universal bank that has a large activity around the corporate investment banking, global markets. We have a large part of global transaction banking, which is a lot of payment system around the world. I don't remember exactly how many countries, like 130 countries around the world.
I mean, we're talking about like trillions of commerce every day.
Absolutely. We're not just talking about Deutsche Bank, the retail bank that's in Germany primarily and in other European countries, but
it's the transaction
we're talking about the transaction aspect. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and those systems, I mean, incredibly critical, right? So
incredibly critical. I mean, every day we settle a large amount of payments, and you get it wrong. Even if you get it wrong by a few dollars or a few euros, you still get it wrong. And you get it wrong for many of us, many customers. So it has a huge impact. It's really critical.
So for you, as you come into the organization, obviously, you kind of chose this idea around safety and soundness, not to just be CIO, not to just be CIO of production, but really to kind of have some foundation around this resiliency concept, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So why do we call that safety and soundness, right? We could have called that IT operations. But I think the idea there, what we had was really how do we move that, if you look at the life cycle, how do you move that to the left of the life cycle? As early as possible in the planning stage, in the prioritization stage, in the design stage, so that you actually design for resiliency. You take that into account. You design for automation.
Sure.
And once the system is actually flipping over from development to production, you're already too late. You've got to do that at the get-go, at the time when you decide to make the investment, at the time when you decide on the technical solution that you pick. So that is really critical for us. So the idea is to move to the left, and then pretty much accompany the entire project during the life cycle, so that when it gets to production, it's ready. So we focus a lot on what we call operational readiness. And we work with the teams to make sure that they are ready to go into that production environment as much as possible.
How do you baseline that readiness, and how do you measure the effectiveness of it?
So many different ways, but I can share with you that a couple of things. For instance, we measure a risk factor on each of our assets. This is something that we started not long ago, but for every application that we have. We look at the underlying technology, we look at the age of that technology, we look at the configuration, we look at the past incidents, the recent incidents, the problem tickets against it, the quality of the teams working with that particular application, and the behavior of the application, the system, and where it sits in the architecture, the alignment with the architecture. And I'm going to stop here, but you can imagine a number of factors, and at the end we summarize that into a risk factor. And what we do from there is we use that risk factor to either accelerate change, accelerate the evolution of that system, or slow it down, depending on the result that we see out there. So I think earlier today we talked about a car and how fast you can drive it, and you want to have, frankly, you want to have good brakes so that you know that you can drive that car as fast as you can, because if you need the brakes, they're here.
Right.
So that's kind of the idea there. If we know that we have a system that has actually a good risk factor, we know that we're in control, we're handling this, therefore we can go faster than a system that doesn't have such a good profile.
I've always liked that metaphor. I feel like the concept of brakes in a car, a lot of people say, it's so that you can stop, but in reality it's not, so you can go fast.
That's kind of the idea, yeah.
So are you bringing more of an agile mindset to the production side as well?
Absolutely. So as we move towards the left of the life cycle, and I truly believe that, I've done that before, is really moving towards agile. I do believe that it's all about agile, all about DevOps, all about products. If you don't do that, you're really not setting yourself for success. So the idea is to have much smaller releases, much faster releases, to accompany the entire development team through the process, to be able to automate testing, to automate continuous integration, continuous deployment, and to be able to pretty much deploy features and functionalities very quickly in the environment, and if you see an issue, to be able to pull it back from that environment. So I think the solution is all about being agile and DevOps. And when I talk about products, it's even going beyond that. One of the things that we learn over the years is that you want to have the development team and the production teams to be working very closely together. But the idea about products is really looking at the entire stack all the way to the customer, even including in a bank would be a back office, middle office, front office, so that the folks that are in the back and are supporting the systems are very close to what the customer experience. Because the customer experience is all in. There is no functional requirements and non-functional requirements. It's all requirements. The first functional requirement is your system is up. If your system is down, obviously the rest of it doesn't really work. So you really want to have all the different technologies that are supporting the system to be frontline with the customer to understand the impact. And that's what we're working towards. So creating those pods.
It brings that accountability loop back.
And it brings that accountability,
yeah.
Exactly, right? So now you're not just looking at a server amongst, I don't know, thousands and 10,000 servers where you don't care much about what happens to it. Now you're linking that server to the application support, the data it supports, all the way to the critical business event that it supports, depending on the time of the day. Now you're much more aligned with the business you're looking for.
And so you've been with the business now for how long?
So at Deutsche, I've been there since August.
Since August.
Yes.
And have you achieved this full resiliency and safety and soundness?
So we're making progress every day. Obviously, it's already fixed. Done. I'm done.
The text message is just the mission accomplished.
It was just mission accomplished. Exactly. So we're making progress. We're pretty much reducing number of incidents on a regular basis, which is good. We're increasing our throughput, which is also very good. But obviously, like any other organization, we still have ways to go.
Okay. So I guess maybe kind of a couple of questions. Obviously, the state of the organization that you walked into, and won't hold you accountable. But when you walk into an organization, I imagine there's a lot of things that are working, right? Introducing some of these concepts might be radical. What are you doing around kind of the culture inside? How do you manage this up to your boss and to the organization to say this is what we're trying to accomplish?
Well, I think from a culture perspective, the bank has looked at how it could actually increase safety and soundness.
Sure.
They care a lot about this. They care a lot about the revenue itself, right? So they understand how important that is. So there's not much to sell there. I mean, they get that. I think it's a question of habits. They've been over the years more used to develop in a waterfall mode, and now we're talking about getting agile. And I don't know if you guys have done such transformation. I did that in another organization before. I have to say I feel pretty successfully when I look at the numbers. Where in that organization at the time, we went from 5% agile to about 85% agile over about 2-year time frame. I think it all comes from the business understanding the value of getting smaller pieces of features, functionality into the environment faster so that they get the return and the value much sooner. And understanding that from a customer perspective, so it's customer experience I was talking about. Once the business gets that, then it becomes much easier to do this. I have no doubt that our leadership at Deutsche Bank will get that, is getting that, and we're making progress on that.
So, it's interesting. We think often about Agile as being kind of this greenfield development opportunity, right? This thing that allows us to take and, create more increments and be iterative. And, we may scrap all the things that get there. But when you start to apply Agile to production side of things and to, kind of constant service improvement or continuous service improvement around what you're doing on the ITSM side, that changes the conversation a lot because it's not about iteration so much as the process of refinement and improvement.
Well, I think you do have the iteration, but it's not just limited to the new technology and the new ways of doing things in the sense of the new pieces of software. It's really about indeed the new way of doing things. It's a new mindset. So you're not trying to fix everything at once over a 3-year project with a multi-million-dollar investment. You're indeed thinking about continuous improvement. And you're not going to get everything done, so you therefore have to focus on what is the highest value in return I can get, and then you start with that. And I think it's really helping people focus on what's the value, why is it that I'm doing this, and you have a clearer sense of the why, and therefore you have much more focus on engagement around that. You can measure it better, and then you can move on to the next piece. So it's a different mindset.
So how long is this project? When do you think you'll actually get to kind of completion on it? Or
so I don't see that as a project.
What have you committed to, maybe? What is your boss actually texting you about right now?
He was texting about a favor, so that's a bit different. But then again, that's all they ask, right? No, it's not. We don't have. I work in the world of production, therefore I look at the number of incidents, I look at the number of downtime. Actually, I don't look at uptime. My bosses do look at uptime. I actually tend to look at downtime instead of uptime because that's really when you impact the business. So you should really be focusing on that. But the idea is to pretty much try to reduce that downtime. And if I can do quarter over quarter, year over year, if I can divide that by half, I think that's pretty a good clip, if you will. So if I can do that, that would be one thing. And then, frankly, it's also minimizing the business impact.
Sure.
So we're really focusing on that. Did we set like a bar? The bar is always moving, so I'm not just looking at that. I really want to continue to increase that right.
Excellent, Frederic. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.